Welcome to Surviving Wokeland with Ethan Quinn, a channel dedicated to exposing and explaining the ideology driving wokeness.
All reasonable people reject the idea of racism. So anti-racism must be a good thing, right? For decades, the civil rights movement fought to create a non-racist society. We all understood non-racism to be the belief in racial equality, which does not allow for the tolerance of racism. We also understood the definition of racism to be prejudice, discrimination, or antagonism by an individual, community, or institution against a person or people on the basis of their membership of a particular racial or ethnic group. Non-racism, or color blindness, is not indifference toward racism, as the left would have you believe. It is the complete moral and legal rejection of racism in society. Non-racism is the idea that everyone is equal and should be treated that way. Race does not determine your ability or character. Now you may ask, isn't what you described anti-racism? No, not at all. The civil rights movement had secured legal non-racism, and social racism was on life support. Then the neo-Marxist ideology of critical race theory began to make inroads into society. Like all Marxist ideologies, it needed a way to divide society into oppressor and oppressed. And it chose race. Critical race theory tells us that non-racism is actually racist, and that instead, we need anti-racism. But anti-racism is not where society rejects racism, but rather a society where race becomes the most important factor in society. Anti-racism tells us that your race is the most important thing about you, and determines whether you are an oppressor or the oppressed, as opposed to being judged by your character, and not your race. In anti-racism, your race determines your character. Anti-racism is a propaganda slogan that has nothing to do with fighting racism, and everything to do with promoting Marxist conflict theory. Anti-racism does to race what traditional Marxism did to class. It labels one group as evil and another as victims. Then it claims that anything done to the evil group is justified, because it's done to liberate the victims, instead of ending racism, or even fighting it. Anti-racism is the belief that being racist towards white people is not only acceptable, but is how you fight racism against black people. While non-racism seeks to unite society by removing race as a barrier, anti-racism seeks to divide society by categorizing people as oppressors or oppressed. Anti-racism promotes conflict theory by claiming that one group oppresses the other, and thereby mandating the social rejection of the oppressive group. Anti-racism is the demonization of white people, and anything considered white culture, which is then misleadingly labeled as whiteness or white supremacy. To understand the real manipulation of anti-racism, we must remember that the left has adopted an entirely new definition for the word racism. According to people promoting racial conflict theory, like the author of White Fragility, Robin DiAngelo, racism is a structure, not an event. By this new definition, anti-racism is resistance against the structure, not the event of racism. Put another way, it's opposing the system that enables racism, rather than the act of being racist. Consider this tweet. Yes, my dear. All white people are racists. You can't help you were born to racist parents, who were raised in a white supremacist system. You can help with tearing down the racist systems and structures that support you, and kill me and my sons, based on flawed science, crafted by flawed white and European people. White people admitting they are racist is necessary for those individuals desiring to do something right now. This tweet articulates the conflict theory idea that white people are racist regardless of their actions. According to leftist ideology, racism is not what white people do. It's the system they live under, namely liberal Western democracy. Anti-racism is the act of tearing down systems and structures, not changing behaviors or attitudes. So anti-racism is the act of tearing down liberal Western society and replacing it with a new system. What is that new system? Well, the author of How to Be an Anti-Racist, Ibram X. Kendi, reveals that anti-racism has an ideological goal rather than a moral one. He said, to love capitalism is to end up loving racism. He also advises on how to be anti-racist. Historically, capitalism plus racism are interlinked, which is why I call them the conjoined twins. Historians like me call them racist capitalism in the singular. But some self-described forms of anti-racism are not anti-capitalist, which in my book means they're not anti-racism. Kendi exposes the true goal of anti-racism when he says it must correlate to being anti-capitalist. According to Kendi, to be an anti-racist, you must reject the free market economy. In other words, You must be a socialist or you are a racist. What better way to force society into accepting Marxism than telling them that anyone who does not is a racist? Marxists are trying to convince us that capitalism causes racism. This is nonsense, but people are falling for it. The next part of the plan insists that if capitalism is racist, the solution to ending racism can only be socialism. So, the systems and structures you must tear down to be an anti-racist are those of liberalism. Hence, the term anti-racist is a con, a purely ideological and political goal disguised as a virtue. The idea that if you believe in the free market economy and the right to private property, you are a racist is absurd. This claim is more laughable because it comes from someone who made millions selling a book that denounces the free market economy as racist. Consider the irony. By his own logic, Kendi would be a racist. The idea that not being a socialist is racism is a straw man argument that requires a massive amount of mental gymnastics. Still, it shows how dangerous it is to accept the ideology propagated to us without fully understanding it. Anti-racism is a term aimed at disguising the assault on liberalism as a morally mandated fight against racism. We need to reject anti-racism and embrace non-racism before this Marxist con pulls society apart. Please share this video because YouTube is shadow banning me. And please like, subscribe, and comment. You can also support this channel by downloading my book, Ministry of Truth: How Propaganda Fuels the Culture War. And please join me every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday as we learn how to survive Wokeland together. Until then, this is Ethan Quinn saying, stay free,